Did you know Amish communities still refuse vaccines even after deadly outbreaks? While the modern world trusts medicine, they choose faith, tradition, and caution. Hospitals nearby see rising infections, yet the Amish stay the course. This isn't ignorance, it's something far deeper. They believe they're protecting their way of life, not risking it. So why do they reject what could save them? The real reason may surprise you. Amish culture and modern medicine. To understand the vaccine resistance, you first have to understand the culture. The Amish live in deliberate separation from the modern world, a lifestyle guided by deep religious conviction and community values. Technology, government systems, and even electricity are often seen as threats to their way of life. This isn't rejection out of rebellion, it's preservation. So when modern medicine arrives with promises and protocols, it's met not with welcome, but with quiet caution. The religious reasoning. And when it comes to illness, their first call isn't the doctor, it's often their faith. For many Amish, health is seen as a matter of divine will. Sickness and healing are both in God's hands, and to interfere too much with that process can feel like questioning his plan. Prayer, rest, and natural remedies passed down through generations are often preferred over pills or procedures. This doesn't mean they're against all medical care, but rather that their first instinct is spiritual, not scientific. Vaccines, in particular, can feel intrusive. They represent control, intervention, and trust in human systems, all things the Amish are trained to be cautious of. It's not about denying reality. It's about surrendering to something higher. In their eyes, protection doesn't come from a needle. It comes from above. Vaccine skepticism. Their doubts didn't start with COVID. This goes way back. Amish vaccine skepticism has deep roots, stretching back long before the pandemic ever made headlines. In the 1970s, outbreaks of measles swept through several Amish communities, and many refused vaccination even then. In the early 2000s, a resurgence of polio was traced to an unvaccinated Amish group in Minnesota, sparking concern, but not much change. For decades, their concerns have remained consistent: fear of side effects, mistrust in government health campaigns, and the belief that natural immunity or divine protection is preferable. Stories of adverse reactions, whether proven or anecdotal, travel quickly through tight-knit communities and reinforce long-held skepticism. To outsiders, this resistance can seem reckless, but to the Amish, it's rooted in generations of cautious separation and a firm belief that not all progress is worth embracing. Rumors and myths. With limited access to digital fact-checking, rumors can become doctrine. In Amish communities, where technology is limited and the internet is rarely used, information travels by word of mouth. Elders, church leaders, and neighbors become the main sources of truth. But without outside verification, stories, even false ones, can take root quickly. A single tale of someone falling ill after a vaccine can echo through households, passed on like a warning. Mistrust of pharmaceutical companies or government programs can grow with each retelling. Myths like vaccines causing infertility or being part of a wider conspiracy aren't questioned. They're quietly accepted. The isolation that protects their culture also shields them from alternative perspectives. Without smartphones or news feeds, they rely on community voices, and those voices carry weight. In a world built on trust and tradition, even a small rumor can shape a lasting belief. COVID hits, even as funerals multiplied, beliefs stayed firm. When COVID-19 swept through the U.S., Amish communities were not spared. In towns across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana, outbreaks surged. Without widespread mask use, social distancing, or vaccines, the virus spread fast, passing from family to family, church to church. Some communities saw unusually high death rates. At one point, certain Amish funerals occurred weekly, even daily. Still, vaccine uptake remained remarkably low. Why? Because for many, the pandemic only reinforced what they already believed, that life and death are in God's hands. Some viewed survival as a test of faith, not science. Others feared that vaccines, developed quickly and promoted aggressively, were part of a system they didn't trust. The losses were real, the grief deep, but in the end, faith and tradition outweighed fear, even in the face of undeniable tragedy. Community before government. So when a government agency shows up with vaccines, they're often met with silence. Amish communities have long kept their distance from government institutions. Rooted in centuries-old persecution and a desire for religious freedom, their way of life is built on self-reliance, not regulation. They govern themselves, settle disputes internally, and educate their children in private schools. This deep-rooted independence naturally breeds skepticism toward outside authority, especially when it comes to health mandates. Public health officials may arrive with good intentions, but to many Amish, they represent intrusion, a threat to autonomy. Vaccination programs, especially those pushed during emergencies, can feel rushed and aggressive. Without trust in the source, even sound advice is treated with caution. In a culture that values community decisions over federal ones, government-backed health campaigns often fall on deaf ears or never make it through the door at all. Natural immunity. And for many, illness isn't a threat, it's a rite of passage. Among the Amish, there's a belief that natural illness builds stronger, more lasting immunity than any vaccine could provide. For generations, sickness has been viewed not as something to avoid at all costs, but as part of life's natural course. Illness is endured, often at home, surrounded by family, with minimal medical intervention. This mindset shapes their approach to health. A fever, a cough, a rash, these aren't viewed with the same fear as in the broader world. Instead, they're seen as necessary trials that the body must go through to grow stronger. This generational attitude toward illness has been passed down for centuries. The Amish trust the body's ability to heal itself, aided by prayer and natural remedies, rather than relying on external intervention like vaccines. For them, immunity earned the natural way is a mark of strength and even faith. Role of bishops and community leaders. One man's word can shape the choices of an entire village. In Amish communities, bishops and elders hold significant influence. These leaders are not only spiritual guides, but also key decision-makers in nearly every aspect of life, including health matters. Their words carry weight, and their stance on an issue can either encourage or discourage an entire community from taking action. When a bishop voices skepticism about vaccines, it spreads quickly through the village. Their authority often overrides scientific recommendations, as their advice is seen as divinely guided and culturally trustworthy. On the other hand, if a leader supports vaccination, even the most hesitant families may follow suit. This dynamic makes vaccine acceptance or rejection deeply tied to leadership. In a society where collective choices are paramount, the approval or disapproval of a bishop can either pave the way for health measures or create a strong barrier to modern intervention. What happens when the young disagree? But what happens when tradition and survival collide? For younger Amish individuals, the tension between deep-rooted beliefs and the need for modern healthcare is becoming harder to ignore. While the older generations continue to resist vaccines, believing that faith and natural immunity are sufficient, younger Amish have started to question whether their community's long-standing refusal is worth the risk, especially in light of the deadly outbreaks they've witnessed. Some have quietly sought outside medical help. They drive to neighboring towns, getting vaccinated in secret, or consulting doctors without informing their families. This hidden act of defiance isn't just about health. It's a quiet rebellion against the traditions that have been upheld for generations. The generational divide is clear. The older generation values tradition above all else, trusting in faith, prayer, and natural remedies. In contrast, the younger generation, increasingly aware of the modern world, sees the risks of not vaccinating as too great. This cultural clash is growing as more young Amish struggle with the fear of losing loved ones to preventable diseases, while also grappling with their faith. As this tension quietly brews, the question remains: will tradition hold strong, or will survival instincts prevail in the end? The 2014 outbreak It wasn't just about their community anymore, the risk was spreading. In 2014, a significant measles outbreak swept through Ohio, with more than 380 cases reported, one of the worst in recent years. What made this outbreak particularly alarming was its connection to Amish travelers, who, due to their vaccine hesitancy, were largely unvaccinated. The outbreak started in the Amish community but soon spread far beyond their borders, affecting neighboring towns and even sparking nationwide concern. The disease, which had been nearly eradicated in the U.S. thanks to widespread vaccination efforts, was making a return, and it was tied to a community that had long rejected vaccines. The ripple effect of this outbreak was felt across the nation. Health officials and the media quickly turned their attention to the Amish, highlighting their refusal to vaccinate and the potential public health risks it posed. The outbreak ignited a larger conversation about vaccine hesitancy, raising questions about how unvaccinated populations might contribute to the resurgence of preventable diseases. This incident brought the issue of vaccine resistance to the forefront, not just in Amish communities, but in the broader debate over public health. The controversy over vaccine choice, the risks of individual decisions affecting public health, and the responsibility of communities to protect those who cannot be vaccinated made headlines. The Ohio measles outbreak forced the conversation to confront the real dangers of vaccine refusal in a modern world. But in a society that values choice, where do we draw the line? Public health officials face a delicate challenge when it comes to Amish communities. While they are allowed to provide education, outreach, and resources about the benefits of vaccination, they are not permitted to force compliance. In a system that respects personal and religious freedoms, public health agencies can only encourage, not enforce, medical decisions. Health teams often try to build trust through local leaders, reaching out with information and offering vaccine clinics. They emphasize the safety of vaccines and the dangers of disease outbreaks, hoping to sway those on the fence. However, these efforts can be met with resistance, especially if there is a history of mistrust or misunderstanding of the healthcare system. Amish communities value autonomy and decision-making within their own group, and many see vaccine mandates as government overreach. So, even with all the outreach and education in the world, health officials are limited in their ability to compel change. The question remains, how can public health agencies balance education and personal freedom, and where does the line between encouragement and intrusion truly lie? Culture versus consequence. Respecting tradition is important, but at what cost? The question at the heart of the vaccine debate in Amish communities is a deeply ethical one. Should cultural freedom outweigh efforts to protect public health? On one hand, the Amish have the right to live according to their beliefs, free from outside interference. Their culture, shaped by centuries of tradition, values autonomy, faith, and self-reliance, including in healthcare. On the other hand, the spread of preventable diseases like measles, especially when linked to vaccine refusal, poses a threat not only to the Amish, but to society at large. The health risks are undeniable, and the consequences of an outbreak can be severe, even fatal. This dilemma isn't easily solved. The challenge lies in balancing the preservation of cultural identity with the need to safeguard public health. Should society respect the Amish decision to refuse vaccines, even if it results in harm, or does the greater good demand intervention? It's a difficult question with no clear answer, and the consequences will continue to unfold as the debate intensifies. When beliefs shift, what finally convinced them to get the shot? While most Amish communities continue to resist vaccination, there are a few rare stories of individuals who have chosen to change their minds. These stories often come from those who have experienced firsthand the devastation of a preventable disease or seen loved ones suffer or die from something like COVID-19. For some, the decision came after the loss of a child or family member during an outbreak. The grief and guilt that followed led them to reconsider their stance on vaccines. For others, it was a growing realization that the risks of disease far outweighed the potential side effects of a vaccine. In some cases, these individuals were influenced by a close relative or trusted leader who began to question the traditional refusal. In others, personal experience, seeing the harsh realities of illness in a modern world, shifted their perspective. These emotional and practical reasons led them to take the step that many Amish would never consider: getting vaccinated. While these stories are rare, they show that change is possible even in the most tightly knit, tradition-bound communities. How many must die before change begins? As we've seen, the struggle between preserving cultural traditions and ensuring public health is complex and fraught with difficult choices. Amish communities, with their deep faith and commitment to autonomy, continue to resist modern medicine, including vaccines. Their beliefs are rooted in a worldview that prioritizes spiritual guidance over scientific intervention. But as preventable diseases continue to spread, the question remains: how far can society allow cultural autonomy to go when public health is at risk? The Amish may be firm in their convictions, but the consequences of refusing vaccines are felt by all, not just those who refuse. The dilemma is a delicate one, and there are no easy answers. As we reflect on these difficult decisions, we must ask ourselves, how many lives must be lost before change begins? And can we find a way to respect cultural beliefs while ensuring the safety of everyone? The answers to these questions will shape the future of public health and perhaps the future of Amish communities themselves.